Yeah.
It may not be a ranked versus ranked matchup, but it is still one of the best rivalries in all of college football. Florida State and Miami coming your way on Saturday night. So welcome back to the Gridiron Expert, breaking down everything you need to know for this in-state rivalry matchup, this in-state ACC matchup, one of our games of the week, as the 12th ranked Hurricanes will host the struggling Florida State Seminoles. Now, there are a few things we need to address here before we really break down the analysis. The first is a little bit of history. Miami has won 3 straight games against Florida State. They've won 3 straight in this series. That includes last year's 27-10 victory in Tallahassee. That game was ultimately the final nail in the coffin for Willie Taggart. Right after that game, he was fired, middle of the season, as head coach of the Seminoles. Another thing you should note here is that Florida State will be without their head coach, Mike Norvell, who tested positive for coronavirus. Throughout this week, he has been kind of conducting practice remotely. He's been watching practice through film. They've set up a bunch of video cameras for him. So he's been trying to conduct practice and trying to conduct meetings with other coaches as best as he can remotely, but he will not be traveling with the team for this game. Chris Thompson will be serving as head coach against the Hurricanes for Florida State. So a major note there. Norvell, this will only have been his second game with the Seminoles, and he's missing it. And it was certainly a big one. Miami comes into this game 12th in the country, as we mentioned, 2-0 on the year, defeating UAB in their season opener and coming off an impressive road victory over what was then number 18 Louisville, 47-34. A fantastic offensive performance by De'Aaron King and offensive coordinator Rhett Lashley. Florida State, on the other hand, they come into this game 0-1, having played just a few weeks ago, but falling to Georgia Tech at home 16-13. And we mentioned the struggling Florida State Seminoles, and we're going to kind of transition into their offense here, breaking down the analysis on both teams. The offense is a thing that has struggled mightily over these past few seasons, and something that we really thought would change relatively quickly under Mike Norvell. And when in that Georgia Tech game, we did not see that. Again, I don't know how much stock you can put into that. It's a brand new head coach in a season where every team basically had no opportunity to prepare, no spring practice, not much fall practice. Coronavirus obviously preventing a lot of that. So how much really could you put into Florida State's performance against the Yellow Jackets? But when you look at this game, guys, and how they played offensively in their first game, it should have been a lot better. It was really more or less the same as what we saw under Willie Taggart these past few seasons, and that is poor play and poor play calling. Their quarterback, James Blackman, threw for 198 yards, 1 touchdown, and 1 interception. But honestly, his stats and Florida State's offensive performance should have been a lot better if his receivers would have learned how to catch the ball. Florida State, so many dropped passes, so many missed opportunities in the passing game against the Yellow Jackets simply because they didn't know how to catch. So they've got to go back and work on those fundamentals. And Florida State, offensively as a whole, has to find more playmakers. Because when you look at the stats from that game, guys, Blackman couldn't do it all by himself. 198 passing yards. Jashawn Corbin, the running back, was the leading wide receiver in that game. Tamorian Terry, the star wide receiver, was second. Those two players combined for 107 of the 198 passing yards, 107 reception yards out of the 198. So you obviously are missing a lot of key players there, a lot of guys that need to step up and contribute to this offense to make the Seminoles offense a little bit more electric and a little bit more unpredictable because you cannot rely solely on Blackman to do it by himself, and you can't keep relying on your running back to be your leading wide receiver. So that's something that Florida State has to watch out for in this game, something they need to improve in this game. Keep in mind they are coming off a week of rest, so without their head coach, that might be a little bit of a damper, but getting that extra week of preparation for one of the biggest games of the year could certainly work in their favor. Miami, on the other hand, fantastic job offensively this season, and I think last week was really what showed that the U's not back, that Miami is not officially back, but they're trending in the right direction because that was one of the best offensive performances we've seen from Miami in a very, very long time. So a lot of credit goes to Rhett Lashlee and what he has done as offensive coordinator down at the U. Miami so far, in those two games we mentioned, against UAB and against Louisville, very, very balanced, guys. That's something that's really impressed me. I didn't expect the running game to be as potent as it is for Miami this season. They're averaging 241.5 passing yards per game. They're averaging 248.5 rushing yards per game. So both those fantastic marks, up there as one of the better offenses in the country as of right now. Again, take that as you will. Not many teams have played, but still a very impressive mark for the Hurricanes, and a very impressive performance by their quarterback, D'Eriq King, who threw for 325 yards and 3 touchdowns in that win against Louisville. And the thing that really stuck out to me, and we addressed it in our Week 3 recap, and we'll address it now, is that D'Eriq King against Louisville only had 9 rushing yards. We know King is a dual-threat quarterback. We know he's capable of beating you both through the air and on the ground. Against UAB, I thought he played better on the ground than he did through the air. It was the opposite against Louisville, where he hardly ran at all. So Miami can know how to utilize his talent. Miami can unleash him and use him however they choose, which is a nightmare for opposing defenses. So very impressive stats by King to go along with Cameron Harris and Brevin Jordan. A very solid running back that rushed for $134 against Louisville, and Brevin Jordan, one of the best tight ends in all of college football. This offense is clicking, and it's something that we haven't seen at the U in a very, very long time. So when you look at these keys, guys, offensively, we're going to get to the defense here in a second, but offensively, a major key for Florida State going into this game to me, as we mentioned, was work on your fundamentals. And that's something they should have been working on as soon as they lost to Georgia Tech. Because not only were they unable to catch the ball, but Blackman did have a few missed throws, obviously an interception, and the defense, which again we'll get to, was missing tackles left and right. So Florida State was not playing sound, fundamental football, and if you don't get the basics down, especially at the college level, you're not going to win. You can't go out there and play fancy and play flashy. You get to do that when you know how to do the basics, and that's something that the Seminoles clearly have not figured out yet. So work on your fundamentals. Don't get fancy. Just catch the ball. Just make the plays. Don't try to do anything too fancy. Don't try to do anything that you shouldn't do, or don't try to be the hero. Just do your job, as Bill Belichick and the Patriots would say. Florida State also needs to try to incorporate their run game a little bit more. Run game was practically non-existent in that loss against Georgia Tech. Again, Blackman can't do it all by himself. So LaDamian Webb or Jashawn Corman or both have to step up in this game to take that edge off the passing game against what's going to be a very, very tough Miami defense. For Miami, their offense, what is their key? Very similar to Florida State's. Don't get fancy. Stick with what is working. Don't go out there and try to do anything too flashy. Maybe you try to incorporate a few more runs with D'Eriq King. If I'm Rhett Lashlee, maybe I call King's number a little bit more just to test that Florida State defense and keep them in check. Don't keep King in the pocket the entire time. Maybe have a couple design QB runs. A little bit of an RPO offense here that would be very difficult to stop for this very underwhelming Seminoles defense. So maybe call a few plays with him. But he was great in the pocket against Louisville. He was hitting his receivers where he needed them. They were making play after play after play. That worked fine against Louisville. I think it'll work fine against Florida State. So don't go out there and try to do anything too outlandish. Stick with what's working. When it stops working, then you figure something out. But I don't think that'll be too much of an issue on Saturday night. We take a look at the defenses. Florida State first here. The defense, started strong in that game against Georgia Tech. They had a couple interceptions, picked off Jeff Sims a few times. They had a handful of blocked field goals. Florida State led that game 10-0 at halftime, guys. It probably either one should have been a larger lead for Florida State had they been able to take advantage of the missed opportunities, or two, Georgia Tech could have been tied or winning had they taken advantage of their opportunities, had they not committed so many mistakes. So it kind of goes both ways there. But the Seminoles owned that defensive edge, at least in the first half. But the one thing that I looked at here, and the big key for me for Florida State, is they've got to generate a pass rush. They had 1 sack against Georgia Tech in that season opener, guys. 1 sack, and that's not going to fly against D'Eriq King. Again, if you start pressuring King, he is such a veteran quarterback that he can either, one, escape that pocket, make the play with his legs, or two, he knows how to step up in the pocket and move around the pocket to buy his receiver some time, buy himself some time, and then still make the throw. We saw that a handful of times in that Louisville win, and that's something that I think we'll see a handful of times here on Saturday night. Florida State's got to get to King. They've got to be able to pressure him a little bit, make him a little bit unsettled, because if you give him too much time in the pocket, he's going to deliver, and he's not going to make a mistake. So Florida State has to do that. The pass rush was practically non-existent against the Yellow Jackets, and if it's non-existent here against Miami, it's going to be a very, very long night. For the Hurricanes, we know the defense is usually their strength. Now, they did allow 516 yards of offense to Louisville, so at first glance, you would say, well, that is a horrible defensive performance. But again, they allowed that many yards, still won by 13 points, and still had 3 turnovers. They forced 3 turnovers against the Cardinals. So there is still work to be done on this defense. This is not as elite of a defense as we've seen in years past. Still work to be done there. But remember, Manny Diaz is their head coach. He is a defensive-minded head coach. I think he's going to turn this defense around very, very quickly. Secondly, last year against Florida State, Miami had 9 sacks against the Seminoles. They sacked Florida State 9 times in one game last year in that 17-point victory. Florida State's offensive line is still, kind of like Miami's defense, not quite there yet. Florida State's offensive line is still having to improve and still working. They're going up against what is going to be a very potent pass rush, once again led by Quincy Roche, the transfer from Temple, who has finally made a name for himself at Miami and has played very well, I believe, in his first 2 games against the UAB and then the Cardinals. So they're going to have the key for both teams here defensively, very similar keys, pressure the opposing quarterback. And who's going to have that edge? It's absolutely going to be Miami. Neither offensive line's that great, but Miami's, to me, has looked better in their 2 games than Florida State's did in their first. And I like Miami's defensive line a lot better than I do Florida State's. So I think they're going to give Blackman quite a rough day in that backfield, which means Blackman, who also is a veteran quarterback, is going to have to make some smart decisions and figure out how to make plays with his legs, or at least make smart throws, smart decisions when he is under pressure. So what is our final analysis in this game if you haven't been able to pick up on it? There are a couple things that you have to keep in mind going into a rivalry game. The emotions are always so high in games like this. And usually when we talk about rivalry games, we say we throw records out the window. This game is so early on in each of these team seasons that we don't really have to throw records out the window. We don't have to throw much history out the window. It's not rivalry weekend for the season finale. But anything can happen in a rivalry game. The worst team can beat the best team, vice versa. A worse team can take one of the better teams down to the wire because emotions are so high. And emotions are certainly going to be high for Florida State, I think, more than the Hurricanes, simply because they are going to be without their head coach. They want to go out there and win for Mike Norvell, who is going to be home, literally sidelined, quarantined, with the coronavirus. So they're going to go out there and want to win it for him. These players are going to be hungry to snap that 3-game losing streak against the Hurricanes. So a lot of emotions running high in this game, which can sometimes really affect the outcome or affect how close a game can be, even if you don't expect it to be. But my final thought, and I will leave you with this. I know Florida State has had basically 2 weeks to prepare for this game. Go back and watch their game against Georgia Tech. They faced off against a guy named Jeff Sims, who is slowly but surely becoming a household name, at least within the ACC. 2 impressive performances so far in his young career. Jeff Sims, in his first collegiate start, went on the road to Tallahassee and put up 341 yards of offense by himself. That's passing and rushing. That's not 341 yards for the team. 341 offensive yards by Jeff Sims. If Jeff Sims can do that, imagine what D'Eriq King can do. Because Jeff Sims is no D'Eriq King. He might get there, but he's not even close to being there yet. King has that huge advantage. And if Jeff Sims can put up that ridiculous of numbers in his first start, I believe King can put up even better numbers, especially to me with more offensive talent surrounding him. I like this game a lot for the Hurricanes. I like Manny Diaz and Rhett Lashlee, that duo, a lot in this game. And in a rivalry game, another thing you have to keep in mind is not only are emotions running high, but you want to try to defeat your rival by as much as possible. and I think Miami runs away with this game. Manny Diaz tries to run up the score late in this game just to kind of stick it to their rival, and the Hurricanes will win this game by at least 10 points, although I certainly think it will be more than that. And with that win, Miami will improve to 3-0 on the year, possibly a top 10 team going into Week 5. The Hurricanes, they're not officially back yet, guys, but with every win and with every dominant performance, they are slowly but surely getting there. So, guys, thank you so much for watching us here at the Gridiron Expert on YouTube. As always, make sure to continue to like, comment, subscribe, and share our videos. Check out everything down in the description below as well. We've got exclusive content on our website, thegridironexpert.com. We just sent out our weekly newsletter, so sign up for that if you haven't already. We just released our new set of expert picks. You definitely want to sign up for those if you haven't already. And you also want to sign up for our content over on Patreon, exclusive college football content from us that you will not find anywhere else except on Patreon. So make sure to go sign up for that. The links for all those things down in the description below. And once again, guys, as always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time right here on the Gridiron Expert.